What's up, everybody? In this video, we're going to talk about writing classic SATB and organ accompanied anthems, sort of in the style of the Church of England communion anthem, like the English choral sound. I'm recently back from England, where I was in Cambridge doing lots of singing and conducting, and we were able to get a decently good recording of a composition I wrote about 2 years ago called Give Us the Wings of Faith. It's an SATB anthem accompanied by organ. It's probably one of my most performed works. I wouldn't say it's overly imaginative or inventive, but it's a nice anthem that is fairly approachable that people just like. So we'll have a listen to the anthem and then dive into the score to talk about some of the things that are going on here. All right, so that was the recording of the piece. We're going to dive into the score here to talk a bit about what's going on. We start off with this organ interlude, and this is really important for a few reasons. You know, it establishes our tempo and the key of the piece, right? That tempo piece coming in from the organ is really important here because it makes it easier to do without a conductor. A lot of parish choirs only have one musician running things, right? They'll have an organist who's also the choral conductor. So having an organ interlude like this at the beginning of a piece makes it possible for choirs that don't have a conductor to do these sorts of works, right? What it also does is the organ part here plays the same tune that the tenor soloist is going to sing. So it's putting that tune in their ears, right? They'll be able to hear that organ accompaniment and know when and how to come in. When I wrote this piece, I wrote it for a choir that I work with where we have a fairly strong tenor section. So you give the solo to the section that's going to do the best with it, right? And being able to write music for the choir that you have and knowing the choir that you have, I think is a really important unlock there, right? So that sort of first line in the tenor solo, really reflecting what was going on in the organ accompaniment. Then everybody comes in unison with that exact same tune, right? So at this point, the whole rest of the choir, they've heard this musical idea, the dee 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 maybe twice, right? So they really will have that in their heads, which will make that entrance when everybody comes in there, you're really not giving them any excuses to mess things up. Within the veil down here, we kind of break out into 4 parts, right? So this isn't a unison anthem, but we've started building things up, through an organ interlude with one tune, a tenor solo. If you didn't have confident soloists, we've done this anthem before where you give it to the whole section. And then by the time everybody else comes in here, they start off with a unison and then they're confident and they break into 4 parts, kind of really easily fanning out from that unison line. So they break into 4 parts and then we do this sort of choral wash. All of the entrances are thematically related, and some of the organ accompaniment is actually doubling those entrances to make it come through more, especially if you're dealing with a sort of semi-pro or amateur choir. Having that organ part like down here, say, doubling up what's going on in the choral parts can really help to instill confidence in the singers. We sort of land on a fairly significant cadence here at How Bright Their Glories Be. And then what happens is, we have the same sort of musical idea coming back in the tenor solo or, the tenor section, depending on what your situation is. Sort of hearkening back to what we introduce things with, we're introducing the second verse, if you will, with the same sort of idea that we introduced the first verse. And also, too, a different melody here. Sort of related, rhythmically related, I guess. You have that, that syncopation coming in on the end of one. But everybody's also coming back into that second verse in unison, a fairly loud moment. Having unison, it's not just going to make them more confident coming in, it's going to make everybody louder. And this is a piece that this is a part you can see the dynamic marking there that I wanted to be fairly loud. Over the page here, the triumph to his death. We're going to bring things down here. I will admit, in the recording that we had, the choir didn't really do that. If I were going to continue working with them, that's one of the first things I would say, on top of being flat in a few places. But this group put this recording together fairly quickly whilst we were also working on a number of other things. We probably spent a cumulative hour working on this, so I wasn't going to be too hard on them. The melodic content for this entrance here, for our glorious leader, and then for his own pattern given down here, is also borrowing from that main musical idea that we introduced at the very beginning of the piece. Like what happened in the wash that we looked at previously over the page, we're doing the exact same thing here, right? Where everybody kind of comes in using a scalar pattern going up that it's not as reflected in the organ part this time, but these are sort of musical ideas that everybody's already heard. This part here, Show the Same Path to Heaven, we're rhythmically borrowing from the main musical idea, and then we have this sort of echo happening in the tenor part, really hearkening back, bringing unity to what's going on with what happened in the beginning of the piece. Then we're going to have this organ interlude. After that interlude, we're gonna have another sort of choral wash. All right, so that was Give Us the Wings of Faith. I hope you enjoyed the piece and took something away from this discussion. If you want to hear more conversations about my music like this, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button.